Oh, okay. That's new.
Okay, I'm told we are live
Yep.
and in color. So I'm going to call the planning commission meeting to order and turn on my mic.
And there we go. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is, I'm told, the last meeting that Sally will not be here. So next meeting, Sally will be here. So we'll go through attendance. Scott?
Here.
Here.
He's too concerned about wiping that mic off.
Where's Sally
was that?
Meter?
Bob?
Here.
Ed?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Jim?
Here.
Dan?
Here.
Laura?
Here.
Amy?
Here.
And Kent is present. Okay. Item number 1, approve planning commission meeting minutes of May 27th, 2020. Do I have a motion and or corrections?
I move that we approve the minutes for the May 27, 2020 meeting.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, item number 2, City of Delafield citizens' comments pertaining to subjects on the consent agenda. Are there any citizens that would like to speak to items on the consent agenda? Seeing none. Citizens' comments on the consent agenda are closed. Item number 3, consent agenda. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Michael Graff, applicant Jean Mulvaney, you are approved, and you're more than welcome to stay. Otherwise, you can head on out. Item number 4, City of Delafield citizens' comments pertaining to items on or off the agenda. Are there any citizens' comments for items on or off the agenda? Seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed. We'll move on to number 5, unfinished business. Items recommended for discussion and possible action. A, DELC 0804.994.016, 2725 Hillside Drive, Delafield. Owner Heritage LLC, applicant Greg Hughes. Applicant seeks approval for an amended conditional use specific implementation plan for a planned development, a multi-tenant sign program in order to modify the west facade and roof line of the existing building for future signage. Is the applicant here?
The applicant has requested that this item be tabled to the July meeting.
Okay, well, we will postpone the item to the July meeting. Okay. 6, new business. Items recommended for discussion and possible action. 6A, DELC 0797.070, 1505 3rd Street, Delafield. Owner Don Hardner. Applicant seeks approval for a site plan and appearance review to construct a 6-foot tall privacy fence along his north lot line. Is the applicant here? Please come on up and give us your name and address, please.
Don Harder. My address is 1505 3rd Street in Delafield.
Great. Amy, you want to give us an overview?
Okay, so this property is on the corner of 1st Street and 3rd Street with an address on 3rd. The applicant is interested in constructing a privacy fence in order to screen the property to the adjacent property to the north. And I will show kind of a picture of what that lot line looks like. The applicant is proposing a screened porch at some point in the near future on the backside of the residence, a few feet elevated from the ground. And because of that, in order to provide the privacy, he is asking for that 2-foot extension from the typically allowed 4 feet. The fence would consist of solid wood posts, and he would like to install the fence as close as possible to the north lot line in order to maximize his yard space, which is relatively small. The fence does comply with the yard setback from 3rd Street. However, it does not comply with the north lot line requirement, and because of that, Plan Commission approval is required. And I just want to note that a 6-foot tall fence can be approved without Plan Commission approval, but in that case, it needs to comply with the setbacks. And in the ordinance where it allows the 6-foot tall fence, it does require that the finished side of the fence face the adjacent properties in the road. And I just also went out to the property just a few weeks ago, and the summer vegetation, if you look, it's pretty well screened as it currently exists. That screening is all deciduous, so it would not be screened during the winter months. And I do believe that if he constructs the fence, he's going to have to remove some of that vegetation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, you did do it already. Okay. So Scott and I did talk about this a little bit, and we felt that because the wood fence, which I have a picture of, does require significant maintenance, we recommend a 3-foot offset from the lot line in order to give him the room to maintain the fence on both sides. And it also allows enough space to have that area, just the grass and lawn, mowed and maintained as well. So I do recommend approval, subject to the following conditions. The fence not be constructed until a building permit's issued, that a stakeout survey be completed by a licensed professional surveyor locating the fence 3 feet from the lot line, or a minimum of 3 feet from the lot line. If he uses maintenance-free material instead, the setback would not be necessary. But any change in materials require Plan Commission review and approval, unless you wanted to waive that for staff review. The finished side of the fence shall be faced toward the neighboring property to the north and First Street, and all installation and future maintenance activities shall occur from the subject property only unless approval is granted by the adjacent property owner, and the fence shall be kept and maintained in good, sound, and presentable condition at all times. And I will just put the survey up to show you that solid black line on the survey is where the fence would be located.
I have a question. On the north lot line, there is an existing fence there. Is that your fence or your neighbor's
I
fence?
believe it's mine because the posts are on my side of the fence. It's just a short wire fence,
Yeah.
maybe 3.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
And when I saw your proposal, I like the idea of keeping that buffer. And I think I'd like to keep that fence there as well. That way it won't allow my neighbor to use that 3 feet as easily. And I'd like to, keep that space for that buffer. But one thing I did want to ask is regarding the survey. I called 5 surveyors, and surveys right now are 6 to 8 weeks out. And I only got one number back so far, but it was $1,000 because they want to resurvey the whole property. And the fence itself is only going to cost $2,600, so that seemed disproportionate. I talked to my fencing contractor, and he said a lot of communities consider unfinished cedar fences to be maintenance-free, and he kind of sold it to me as a maintenance-free fence. So I was hoping that maybe there'd be some flexibility, since I'd be putting the finished side towards the neighbor, keeping that existing wire fence and a buffer space, and the fact that cedar's pretty maintenance-free, that I could waive the need to get a survey. Just measure out that existing fence.
Do you know if your property corner pipes are visible?
I don't know, no. But literally all the surveyors really were just trying to get rid of me. I got one guy, Paul Hilmer, has sounded somewhat interested, so I might be able to get him to do it. But I talked to Land Tech, Lake Country Engineering, Mark Numana was out of business, and Atlas, and none of them really wanted to even touch it.
I recently had a quote for 1,100, so you're right in the ballpark.
Yeah. And, literally, the fence is already there, and I'm not going to move it, the wire fence. So if I can just measure off that fence and go 3 feet in. And I've got a row of trees, so I can't really go any farther than 3 feet in most places. So if I can just kind of follow that row of trees right up against that row of trees and create that buffer space, it would give me enough space to maintain that property. The fence itself, the wire fence, would kind of keep my neighbor from claiming that land. I think it would really work out well.
The issue, of course, could be that wire fence is not where it's supposed to be.
Could be, yeah.
That's common. That someone just threw it up and...
Yeah, it's probably been there for 40 years, though.
Yeah. That's,
I think the wire fence it's on the survey? Is that the
Yeah,
line with
it's
the
on the
X's?
survey. It is on the survey. Actually, I drew the black line right over the existing fence. That's where I thought we put the fence originally. So the new fence would actually be 3 feet into my property from where that black line is.
South.
That black line is the fence right now.
Does the fence go, it goes all the way to the,
Yeah.
what is that, northeast?
Yeah, and it continues on almost to the street, so.
Scott, will he require a survey when he does, if he does that addition or that?
No, because the addition is 25 or 30 feet from a property line. So then it becomes less
Okay.
important.
I mean, if you're comfortable measuring it 3 feet from the fence, the existing fence is surveyed on the lot line.
Then if you're going to agree to locate your fence about 3 feet in, then the risk goes way down. The real key is we want to make sure it's on your property
Right.
first and foremost, and then to be located such that you can maintain that fence.
It would be, yeah.
And Scott, can you help me? I mean, I have a neighbor that has a fence along my property line. For many years, they have just not, they've painted their side, but they don't paint my side. And I don't think it's intentional, it's not anything like that. They just don't see it and they don't think about it. How does the neighbor, if the fence isn't maintained, how does one go about getting it maintained?
Well, our fence, the portion of our code that relates to fencing requires fences to be maintained. But I think it's intended to ensure that fences don't become dilapidated. So I think for it to be in violation of our code, it would have to be in pretty tough shape.
So peeling paint or lack of paint might
Falling
not
down.
qualify?
Well, falling,
Boards
leaning,
falling off.
right. I'd say peeling paint would be, but if it's not painted,
Was painted and then all the paint just disappeared.
well, or discoloration if it's a stained or naturally
Okay, so,
unfinished wood,
so-
it's
so-
a gray area.
yeah. But there is something in the code that requires
Absolutely.
maintenance.
And the condition of this approval is that it be maintained in good condition.
I guess with that wire fence being surveyed on this drawing, I wouldn't have a problem with locating it 3 feet off of that, but I would request that you actually look for your pipes. Your corner pipes might be there.
Yeah.
You could just stretch a string line, or the fence guy could find those, move
Yeah.
them in 3 feet. I don't know if anyone else has issues with that.
No.
I'm not objecting to it, but pipes can be moved, right?
They pound them in pretty deep. I've got them on all
They-
4 corners of my lot.
No, I know what you're getting. In a sinister way, people can move
Sinister.
pipes.
Multiple pipes.
People can do
Mr.
that.
Graff, in addition to these recommendations, and you voiced your view concerning the survey and the fence, would you agree to these conditions that have been set out? You don't have any issue with those conditions?
No, actually, I like the idea of the buffer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, if I can just have a way that some leniency on having to get a certified survey, that would be really helpful.
I'll make a motion to approve items 1 through 4, subtracting item 2, as long as you do the 3-foot setback from the existing fence.
You got to read in what they are, just so
All-
it's
okay.
clear for the minutes.
The fence shall not be constructed until a building permit is issued, item 1. Item 2 is stricken and replaced with, as long as you make the new fence 3 feet back from the existing fence per the old survey.
Okay.
Item number 3, the finished side of the fence shall be faced toward the neighboring property to the north and First Street. Item number 4, all installation and future maintenance activities shall occur on the subject property, only unless approval is granted by the adjacent property owner. And item number 5, the fence shall be kept and maintained in good, sound, and presentable condition at all times.
I'll second that. Dan?
Okay? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Good luck.
Good luck building your fence.
One last question.
Sure.
Since Scott's here, do I get to see you after the meeting?
Sure.
For the building permit, or how does that work?
Sure.
Okay.
Or tomorrow, but
Tomorrow?
sure.
Are you in your office then?
Yep.
Okay.
Or you can wait too.
I'll just wait. Yeah.
Sure. I'll give you your other permit too.
All right, we'll move on to 6B. DELC 0742.013-4703 Vista Park Court, Delafield, owner Parquet Village LLC. Is this another one that got pushed?
Nope.
Needs post?
They are not in attendance. They asked to, this is just scheduling a public hearing, and they were not available. Just so that you know.
Okay. All Concrete Construction Incorporated. Applicant seeks approval to schedule a public hearing for an amended conditional use, which includes a plan development, a site plan and appearance review, and permanent signage for the replacement and enlargement of an existing sign.
Okay, so the subject property is in yellow on the screen. It's Zone B4, but it's part of this much larger residential development that surrounds it, which is zoned R6 residential. The property is part of a planned development conditional use that was granted some time ago in 1971, and there have been several amendments since then for various improvements. The applicant is simply proposing to replace an existing sign, which I will show on the screen. This existing sign is kind of V-shaped. There's two sides to it. It's got existing landscaping, some landscaping, and a spotlight on each sign face. And the existing sign is about 56.7 square feet. The applicants are proposing to replace that sign in generally the exact same location. It'll just be shifted a little bit differently because it will not be V-shaped. It'll just be double-sided. And the proposed sign, although the sign itself is the same size, when you add the land and stone, which is much larger, it ends up being 94 square feet in size. However, the sign does still comply with all of the zoning requirements. It will be made of high-density foam board and, again, the land and stone. They are proposing the landscaping and lighting to remain the same. The landscaping will include dale lilies around the site. I think the picture you see is before that stuff got growing. So when you look at the code, the maximum size of a sign allowed is 150 square feet, which they comply with. However, the setbacks do need to comply with the B4 zoning district unless modified as part of the planned development conditional use, which can be done. And because it's not an exact replacement, the Plan Commission should take specific action on allowing the reduction in road setback. So the existing sign, and the sign will not be any closer, the proposed sign, is 13.9 feet from County Highway R and 25.5 feet from Vista Park Road. So I recommend that you schedule a public hearing for the July meeting, and before then, the applicant, well, they just submitted today a scaled survey that shows the existing sign, and they agreed it wouldn't be any closer. And consider whether or not the road setback flexibility is acceptable, and we would ask that they make sure that the sign's not in the vision corner. And I would like to also reach out to the County Highway Department before July to just make sure they're okay with that setback from the county highway.
Sounds good. They just, before the public hearing, they need to provide us a map with the exact location of where they propose the sign.
Yes. So they came in this morning, but it was a highlighted version, and I just want to get that a little cleaned up. So that'll come before you.
So do we need do we need a motion to schedule a public hearing?
Yeah.
We do. Motion to schedule a public hearing for this item, July 29th.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, and Dan made the
I
motion.
second it.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
On that matter, I just have a quick question. So in the packet, you'll see the old conditional use for this property, and there's a ton of pages. Do you want to see those, the existing conditional use is included in the packet?
This goes back to a conversation we had last month where
I
we're
know.
trying to not make the packets so big.
I could do without.
So we don't
This is
want
not a
to, we don't want to
controversial
not
issue.
have information you need, but by the same time, this
It's
could
not
be
a big business where,
an 80-page document that,
If there's a page or two out of it that affects this item, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
But,
We're only talking about a
I-
sign and a setback.
yeah,
Right.
Out of the whole scheme of things, we don't need the whole
Okay,
deal.
Yeah.
so I'll probably pull that out for next meeting.
Yeah, just the one that's relevant.
And there actually are no signage provisions in the
Oh.
CU.
Oh, wow.
So
We
I
don't
think
need
we
it
have to
then.
kind of start fresh on that piece of it, but, okay,
okay.
good to know.
Thank you.
Good
Did
question.
we all vote? We don't have any vote?
Oh, did they vote?
What's that?
No, we didn't vote.
Oh,
I don't think.
yeah, we did. I said
Oh, yeah,
all
no,
in
we did.
favor.
I'm sorry.
Sally, we voted.
Oh, we did.
You want to vote
Okay.
again, Dan?
Okay.
You want to vote again?
It'd be funny if it was a different outcome.
Okay, we'll move on to 6C, DELC 0793.990.002, 218 North Cushing Park Road, Delafield, owner, City of Delafield, applicant Tyson Strankman Sunvest. Applicant seeks approval to schedule a public hearing for an amended conditional use, which includes a site plan and appearance review for the installation of fencing around recently approved solar panels.
Okay, so hopefully you remember this property. This property is owned by the city, and the applicant obtained plan commission approval just in May, and they received their common council approval in June as well to install solar panels on the property. After they received their approval, We Energies decided that they do want to require fencing around the panel area specifically. They were waiving that requirement if the entire property was fenced in, which this is, but apparently there's a hole that allows people to get through. So
There's big gaps and.
Gaps.
And the Delahart director says there's kids that walk through there somewhat regularly.
So they are proposing a 6-foot-tall chain link fence to be installed around the perimeter, and the fence is not visible from any adjacent properties. I do want to note, this is in the packet, the fence goes all the way to the edge of a gravel driveway on the east side. After talking to the administrator, Tom, they moved that fence over 5 feet. I do have a copy of it. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but moving the fence slightly reduces the amount of arrays that you can have on the property,
Potentially.
but it's otherwise same site plan, same arrays. And here's the slightly revised location that was submitted today. So
We don't want to lose any arrays.
I think they just. yeah,
Make sure we have that discussion if that seems to be where you're heading. Let's have that discussion with the appropriate people before you do that.
Take any panels off, right?
Yeah.
So they just moved it 5 feet off that drive. So we need to schedule a public hearing, and he's got to go back through the process.
Okay.
Make a
Yeah.
motion for the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing for July 29th, 2020.
Can I just do that?
I'll second.
Oh,
We have competing, as long as the motion
Okay.
gets made,
Go ahead.
I guess they're going to let me
Laura's
go.
making. I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, Laura, can you just restate the motion just so
Okay.
Sally's clear?
I'd like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing for July 29th, 2020 at the next Plan Commission meeting, including discussion and potential action.
And the applicant's not, okay, and so we have a second?
Second.
And we understand that they'll be providing an updated map?
Yes, well, they did today, yesterday or today, so.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes? Okay.
Let's do it again.
6D, DLC 079399.001, east of 2018 North Cush Park Road, Delafield, owner Delafield Heartland WPCC, applicant Tyson Startman Sunvest. Applicant seeks approval to schedule a public hearing for an amended conditional use, which includes a site plan and appearance review for the installation of a fence around the recently approved solar panels, which will also result in reduction of the panel area. Possibly.
To shift around a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so same request, slightly different arrays or smaller area, so there's no impact from the previous meeting, but again, they got to go through the public hearing process all over.
So the first one was what was going on the city of Delafield land, which is Public Works.
Yeah, sorry, this is
Delahart.
Delahart.
This one is
Regulations.
Delahart, which is
Okay.
just a different owner of the land, same process.
Got it. I was wondering what was going on. Delahart.
All right,
Motion to schedule a public hearing for item D at the July 29th Plan Commission meeting.
Second.
Second. That was Ed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Great.
Great. Question.
Yep.
In theory, though, that is for the fence, right? So we
Yep.
could pull a building permit for the solar array now with our conditional use permit approval, and then go through the process of getting the fence approved, and then get that permit later?
Is the fence essential for the city of Delafield and Delahart?
And we won't have material. We
Yeah.
just need to be able to order the material. So
I
the
mean-
process would be to get the,
What if they deny it, the fence? Is it critical to the building permit? I don't
it's
know.
a safety issue for the project.
Is it your requirement to install a fence, or is it the city's requirement?
It's really between the host and the owner, We Energies, and
We Energies asked for the fence.
yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem, I'm just gonna wait till it gets released to the building inspector.
So the only, I did talk to Tyson about this
About
too,
that.
but, so there was a conditional use agreement that has to be recorded with Register of Deeds.
Yep.
So if you did that and you got approval and you recorded that agreement without the fencing, you have to do that all over
Do
again.
it all over again. If the definitive agreements that the city has to sign and Delahart has to sign, once those are executed, then we can release the material orders. And the lead times on the material orders are 6 weeks. So we can get that in process while we're waiting to go through this process of the fence approval. And then hopefully get the installation happen while we have good weather, because that'd put us into, September timeframe.
That sound
July.
kosher?
August.
Order the materials with, because you already have the Plan Commission and Common Council approval, or do you have to get a building permit?
We have to have the signed contracts back from the city and from Delahart.
Oh,
Those contracts, once they're signed, then We Energies will release us to order the material,
Okay.
and that's a
They're,
6-week
they're
lead
good
time.
questions. Let's make sure we talk about that tomorrow, and I think we'll find some clear direction. It's
Yeah.
not something the planning
That-
commission
that
is
way we
going to
get it in.
decide tonight.
We can get it in while that's
Yeah.
before winter.
I hear you. I hear you. We want you to have it in too.
Right. Okay.
so we have a post-Plan Commission meeting with
Okay.
administrator, mayor, attorney, so we
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So we'll get you some direction tomorrow.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. 6E DLC 0804.982.0012980 Golf Court, Delafield, owner De La Soda LLC, applicant Brian Randall, Davis and Kluchow. Applicant seeks approval for a certified survey map to divide a lot into two, which will also require approval for a lot without access to the public road. This is a night of deja vu.
So, for starters, the packet is missing.
Come on up, Brian.
Sheet 3 of the certified survey map. All of that sheet includes are the existing easement. So you'll see, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but one of the surveyor's comments and engineer's comments is that all existing easements have to be shown on the CSM. They are on sheet 3. So it'll be ready to go when you go in front of Common Council. And it looks like he brought copies of all of the sheets of the CSM. Okay, so.
This isn't his first rodeo.
And is it my turn?
Yep.
Okay. The property, as you know, includes Chick-fil-A and a multi-tenant building. It's accessed by Gulf Court, which is a private road in the city. The property is also part of the Nagawaki Center Plan Development, and so when the use of the multi-tenant building and Chick-fil-A were approved about a year ago, both of those buildings were proposed to be in common ownership. Since then, the applicant has decided that they would like to sever the two buildings so that each building is owned separately. Lot 1 will contain 71,834 square feet, and that is the furthest from the court. And then Lot 2 is 49,923 square feet. And although both lots do have frontage on public roads, I-94 and 83, they cannot access those roads. And so the fact that Lot 1 is being created without access does require Plan Commission approval in itself, in addition to the CSM. But both lots do comply with all ordinance requirements, including the plan development that's been previously approved. There are several, and I should say the parking of each use complies with the ordinance requirements per lot, so they meet all of those provisions. There are several easement things that we, are working through, and they need to get approval for before they go to Common Council. They just received stormwater management agreement approval, I believe it was yesterday, and so they're good there. We just need to make sure that the easement language is appropriate and not consolidated with these other agreements. So we need to have separate access and stormwater easements in place. We also do just want documentation to make sure that each lot individually will have access through Gulf Court, that nothing changes based on the division of land. And then again, the fourth comment related to easements has been addressed with sheet 3 of the CSM. So the surveyor and engineer comments are enclosed in the packet, but again, they've met the engineer comments, and the surveyor comments shouldn't be too difficult to get through. So we recommend approval to advance to the Common Council upon compliance with the surveyor and engineer comments. All necessary easements and associated language shall be reviewed, approved, and recorded in conjunction with the CSM, including the stormwater access to lots 1 through 2 and access to lots 1 and 2 through Gulf Court, and then any other easements required. Any comments?
Your turn.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the Plan Commission, I'm Attorney Brian Randall, Davis & Keelthal, 111 East Kilbourne Avenue in Milwaukee, 53202. I think I'm also the applicant tonight under the new online application requirements. We took the lead in submitting everything, and I think part of learning that new system is why what's in the packet, it turned out we had one missing page on the CSM materials, and there is actually one extra page. So what I passed out in paper form tonight, staff also does have electronically. And Mr. Hafner suggested I just walk you through the differences real quick. And so I'm prepared to do that. I believe the document is pages 84 through 87 of your online packet. And actually take that back, 83 through 87. And in the lower right-hand corner, for those who don't look at a lot of CSMs, that's where the sheet numbers are, so I'll be referencing those. Sheet 1 of 7, we now have 7 total sheets. In the packet, it's shown only 6, and even then we were missing 1 page. But we have 7 total sheets. Page 1 really did not change, it's the cover sheet. Page 2, also, sheet 2 did not change, but as the planner indicated, that's where the stormwater easements are documented. And the top graphic actually shows you, and I know there are some Public Works Committee members here who remember a lot of discussion about stormwater, but this parcel did have a different easement and a surface pond. And so the top graphic actually vacates the old version of the easement, and the lower graphic shows the outline of where the underground stormwater detention system is, and that footprint then is now shown in that lower graphic, important for the CSM to be properly depicted. Page 3, or sheet 3, was the missing, or one of the missing sheets. It's not the new one, but it was a missing sheet. And that, again, simply shows some of the other easements related to We Energies, as well as the very significant tree on the far west of the parcel. Not touched, it looks really good as I drove through the site this evening. Sheet 4 was one we also did not have in the packet, but it's also the very important one the planner was just talking about. That shows the cross-access easement, because now that we will have 2 separate parcels, the lot 1, which is where the Chick-fil-A site is, would certainly need to have access rights through lot 2 ultimately to hit Gulf Court. And so that's where the rectangles and the pathway that are shown, that gives the cross-access rights to lot 1 through lot 2. And in the paragraphs there are references to that easement, and they're also, as you might expect in a commercial transaction like this, a very thick document between the private parties as far as what those easement rights all entail. Sheet 5 of 7 is where we just get to the surveyor certificate and other signatures. That really did not change other than the page number. Sheet 6 of 7, the same, and sheet 7 of 7, those page numbers were just updated. So we've been working very hard with staff, very good to work with. We have a good surveyor. Deb Tarnow could not be here this evening, but Key Engineering has been doing things right, and as you might suspect, we've met all the setbacks. The site was laid out this way for a reason, so that if this came to be, which it ultimately did, and we needed to do 2 separate lots, we met all the setbacks, all the spacing requirements. And so we appreciate the staff's hard work and the recommendation to approve, and hope you will do the same. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Looks like it's part of a grand plan.
Food is good.
So if this is approved, it doesn't have any negative impact on the big tree?
It does not have any negative impact on the big tree.
That's all I wanted to know.
Still shown on the document.
It's still alive.
Still alive. Looked good tonight.
Just want to make sure.
I would request they take down the orange fence.
Yeah.
Oh, the plastic
Yeah.
orange fence?
Yeah, that looks pretty tacky.
Yeah, temporary.
These 2 lots are still going to be owned by the same person, right? Or same
No.
group?
No.
At this point, they are owned by
Okay.
Delafield LLC, but they may, I mean, nothing's forever in any
Right.
regard, but.
You're
it
just getting ahead of things.
It could be,
Yeah.
and so that they could be conveyed together or separately,
Right,
and just gives us that flexibility.
okay.
So is that cross-access easement, I'm assuming non-revocable or in perpetuity? Or is there something that could take that away and landlock that lot?
The very last phrase in the paragraph caption below does have the word perpetuity.
Oh, I
so
missed that. I was
that's
reading
okay.
this and I missed that. Okay,
We're
it's
just
in
giving you
there.
that missing page for the first time tonight, so you'd have to look at it very quickly, but no, it's supposed to
Okay.
be not revocable.
I would
and
assume so.
Anyone who would buy lot 1 certainly would negotiate and double check that and everything, but it,
Yeah.
on its face is meant to be perpetual.
And then the stormwater maintenance agreement, which you alluded to, we deliberated in depth at Public Works Committee. I'm going to assume that that has not been changed, it's just being assigned to Lot 2?
It has not
Has the
been changed-
verbiage in that?
It has not been changed substantively. There were a number of updates that had to be made because of this. And I'll explain, one of the only substantive changes though in that document is that it does clarify the owner of Lot 2, whoever that is, will be responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater system. Again, that's thinking ahead for future conveyances. So the Lot 1, while the system is under that property, based on the easement, Lot 2 will have to pay to maintain it and have those obligations. So the maintenance agreement has been adjusted in those ways. I believe Mike Court and Tom Hafner have been reviewing it, and certainly that will be in order by the time the council acts. But substantively, it's still.
I mean, I went through what was in our
Amy, you
packet,
wanna-
but I didn't have the original one
We
to
should
compare
follow
it
up
to.
on that.
And I noticed, like you stated, that it assigns it to Lot 2. and
Right.
If those are the only changes, otherwise I would have said, let's bring it back to Public Works, but I'm fine with that.
And in that agreement, they also make it really clear that the city has the right to go over that same cross easement and access easement to get to the stormwater facility and do any required maintenance that's defaulted by the owner. So that's been reviewed very carefully.
Yeah, it looked the same. I just didn't have the original one to compare it to, but,
I think we shared with staff what we call a red line version that shows, and they really
Okay.
are commas here, little words there,
Yeah.
other than the clarification on the Lot 2
okay.
obligations.
Looks well done to me.
Then I'll make a motion to approve upon compliance with the survey and engineering comments. All necessary easements and associated language shall be reviewed, approved, and recorded in conjunction with the CSM, including stormwater access to Lot 1 through Lot 2, access to Lots 1 and 2 through Golf Court, and other easements noted by the surveyor and engineer, and recommend same to council.
I'll second.
Excellent. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you for the excellent work. Yeah, so it's second to go, so. Okay, 6G, DELC 0807.985.005, 3655 Kettle Court East, Delafield, owner 3655 Kettle Court LLC, John Barker, applicant, AM Vehicles LLC, DBA Auto Elegance Collection. Applicant seeks approval for a business plan of operation to operate an internet auto sales business out of the building.
6, are
So-
we doing 6F?
What about F?
Oh, I read G, so we're gonna do G.
Gee whiz.
Is that applicant here?
Does not appear that they are here.
Okay, so that'll be postponed to the next meeting.
Okay.
I know we need input from that applicant, and they're not here, so. Okay, back to F. DELC 0826.997.001, 3660 Kettle Court East, and DELC 0807.985.013, 3708 Kettle Court East, Delafield, owner applicant Riley LLC, applicant John Coots, MSI General, applicant seeks conceptual approval for a site plan and appearance review to construct a 10,000 square foot addition to the existing manufacturing building and additional parking. You want to come on up? Sure. And Amy, you want to give us the overview?
Okay, so you've seen a lot of different uses and proposals on Kettle Court East, but the subject property is highlighted in yellow, and it also includes the adjacent property to the east, which is not highlighted here. The west property does contain a 48,330 square foot building used by Tanis Brush for manufacturing. And there is an existing, on this it shows a gravel drive or parking lot on the east property, but it's actually asphalt. And it's currently being used by the adjacent property owner to the east, which is, what are they, puffed, the stuffed puffs.
Awesome.
So that asphalt parking lot never did receive approval from the Plan Commission, so it needs to be dealt with anyway. So the applicant is here to deal with that issue. They are proposing a 10,000 square foot addition. Let's see if we can find a site plan. They're proposing a 10,000 square foot addition on the east side of the property. So the building would be a total of 58,330 square feet. They're also proposing a larger addition. Here we go, this is better. So that dark blue, purple is the 10,000 square foot addition. The lighter color to the east of that is proposed for future use, as well as that darker gray parking area. That is not part of this proposal. They're just showing it as a build out to identify how it'll all fit on the property down the road. The proposed site plan, the addition, does require about 4 feet of cut in order to accommodate that grade. However, they don't need any retaining walls, and they are dealing with drainage. And then there's an existing dumpster on the east side of the property that will need to be moved. So the existing dumpster is this little square here. It'll need to be moved to the other side of the addition. So the proposal, I have a table that shows all of the dimensional standards. The proposal does comply with all dimensional standards of the code. The parking lot, let's see if we can find, here is a site plan that shows the existing parking lot on the east property. So when we look at the number of required parking spaces, they're required to accommodate 123 spaces. They currently have 91, but they're losing 18. So they would like to use the parking lot that exists as part of their approval. However, they don't show 24-foot aisle widths. So they're going to have to reduce the number of parking spaces. So that's something that they'll be prepared to bring to you next month. However, one thing that they could use some feedback on at tonight's meeting is whether or not you'd be willing to allow banking of some of the parking sites, because they don't feel it's necessary for the current or proposed use. That would mean they wouldn't have to enlarge the asphalt area.
Until they came in for the addition.
Right. And when they come in for the future addition, they're proposing quite a few extra spaces, so they'll have plenty at that point. Architecturally, and I guess, I don't think I have it in here, but as part of a parking lot, you're also required to accommodate landscaping and landscape islands or adjacent to the parking lot around it. So that is something that they will be coming to next month's meeting with some more information on. Architecturally, which is really what is probably most important for tonight, they are proposing, currently they have, the entire building is made of masonry. And on the addition, they will continue that same look, except for on the east side. See if I can zoom into this. They're proposing that whole wall to be metal to match the same like color scheme of the building. But because they are proposing that future addition, they don't want to put a costly side to the structure. So they have no windows. There's a little exit door in the corner, but otherwise it is a large metal sheet. So they are looking for some input on whether or not that's acceptable. They're not proposing any changes to signage. The landscaping, the addition's going to require the removal of 2 trees. One's dead and there's 1 live maple tree. And then I just have in here suggesting that they mitigate for the loss of those 2 trees since they were part of a previously approved landscape plan, and that the applicant should consider some additional landscaping on the north side of the addition. And then in the previous section, we talk about adding some landscaping on the north side of the parking lot as well to screen that from the road. Lighting, they're proposing, I mean, that's real insignificant, 2 new wall pack lights on the east side of the addition and 1 wall pack light on the south side of the addition. This is not shown, I don't think it's shown on a plan, but that existing parking lot that you have not approved yet has 2 pole lights. They're solar operated, standing on wood posts. And so they should receive some feedback on whether or not that's acceptable or if they need to come in with a new lighting plan to light the parking lot, or can they remove the lighting altogether on that extra parking lot. Stormwater management, they are working on that right now. They do need to, because of the additional parking lot and the addition combined, they do need to provide updated stormwater management facilities, and they're in the process of getting those planned out. There's currently a basin in between the building and the road, and I can't remember, John, are you doing something similar in front of the parking lot, proposing to do something
We're going to have
similar?
a proposal for a secondary storm swale that will feed into that existing basin that we're looking at right now.
So we did recommend that they provide stormwater management facilities that accommodate the future addition. However, it's not conducive for the way the site works right now. So I think the access is in the way of providing a larger basin. And so they would prefer to just provide stormwater management for the improvements that are proposed as part of this proposal. So all the applicant is looking for here is conceptual approval of the addition. They understand that they need to submit a few more details, but want to make sure that that metal siding is acceptable, most importantly. So we recommend approval subject to the following items being addressed before formal action, and that includes a landscape plan considering the parking lot screening, the removal of the 2 trees, and then there's a recommendation that the north side of the addition and parking lot be landscaped. Submittal of a revised site plan that complies with stormwater management and parking requirements. The parking lot aisles shall be 24 feet in width. Submittal of a detailed rendering of the dumpster enclosure, including the type and color of enclosure and screening, and then a revised lighting plan that includes those pole lights, unless they're proposing to remove them. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add the parking lot was not done by us, by MSI General, so that was a little bit of a curveball that we found out about. I've been working with Scott Tanis for a couple of years on this expansion as they've been looking at options for that lot that he's owned. The neighboring property put that parking lot in. Scott thought they went for approval, they didn't, so I found that out and been working on that with Amy and Mike to come up with a way to make sure that it does get approved as a part of the process for our addition. So there are certainly some updates to that parking lot, and then also on the stormwater side that we're going to take care of as part of the 10,000 square foot addition. I would add that the metal panel is not without precedent in this park. The neighbor to the east and the neighbor right across the street from Tanis all have metal panel prominently on their building, and then there's also 3 buildings along Hillside Drive that you can see from the interstate that all have metal panels as well. So it's not a particular building material that's without precedent in the park, and our design staff thought by putting it on the west side, it's really only visible to 2 neighbors, Stuff Pups and Arco up the road. That's a dead-end street as you go up Kettle Court. So, but we also wanted to get feedback from the Plan Commission, make sure that was an acceptable way to progress as we get our final documents ready for next month's Plan Commission.
Comments from the commissioners?
I just had one question to clarify. In the picture of these buildings down there, I don't know where that picture is, but those are the ones without the windows, right?
Say that again, James.
The 2 buildings, the pictures that are photographed, those are the additions that you want?
That's the additions.
We
That's the
were
addition.
showing a rendering of the addition
Right.
on the east side, yes.
The one with the windows.
But you can see,
So the front would follow the same building materials as the rest of the building, and then it would just be that expansion wall that would be a metal panel.
Okay.
We may end up putting windows in there just to allow some natural light in, but they would be minimal and they would be up high, if anything.
And so not putting windows in was more of a cost factor, or what was the reasoning?
No, it's just that whole area is going to be for warehousing. They're going to fill it with racking, so the practicality of it is pretty minimal, but we might end up putting some windows up high just to allow a little bit of natural light into that space.
Okay, I believe the previous page has a rendering of that side with windows.
Yeah, I think our 2D elevation might show the windows as an option.
That one.
oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had played around with a few different options, so apologize for the inconsistency in the submittal, but so as you can see on that elevation there, we are showing a couple windows up high potentially. But the thought is when they have the ability to do the final expansion, then that wall would come out and that would all be open for manufacturing space. So they're in a few different municipalities right now. They're trying to consolidate operations here in Delafield.
So that's pretty much down the road.
It would be down the road a little bit.
Okay.
Yep, but we're trying to think appropriately.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, it makes sense to leave it, all metal or even just some windows, minimal amount, because if you're going to expand off of it, it doesn't make sense to put all the additional work into it to have it finished off in any way like that. So I wouldn't have a problem with leaving it that way.
Who is using the parking lot right now?
It's a mixture of Stuff Puffs employees and some of Tanis employees.
Will that continue?
I believe Tanis will probably take control of that parking lot going forward, so, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Their operations staff is at a maximum of about 70 to 80 employees per shift, and so their parking needs are a little bit less than what the code requires, but we are trying to follow what the code has asked for, so that's where Amy's comments on the parking and banking, some of that parking came in.
One other question on the recommendations that Amy had brought out, I believe there were 1 through 4. Do you have any questions concerning those 4 recommendations?
I think for us, the one recommendation that the light poles that the neighbor put up on that parking lot, it's certainly something that we would typically not put up, so I think we're open to that. I guess I'm just curious if a solar powered light pole is something that's acceptable in Delafield, or if there's any precedent to it. I certainly haven't seen it, but
I don't think we've ever done it.
more curiosity than anything, I guess. So
Nothing I
seems
recall.
pretty creative way to not have to run electrical out there, but not what we would typically do.
But otherwise, you would agree with these recommendations?
I do, yeah. We have no issues with them. Yep.
Thank you.
Scott, do you have any issues with the pole? And any?
Well, it's aesthetics and the photometrics. I mean, so,
And I don't think they meet either, the aesthetics or the photometrics. That was put up more or less along with that lot, middle of the night for a temporary deal by Mr. Barker, I believe.
I would agree.
So, yeah, I would like to comply with number 4, that we get some kind of a permanent lighting situation in there.
Sure, no problem.
And you said there were 2 trees that needed to be mitigated?
Yeah,
And
there's.
one is dead?
One is dead, and there's a maple tree on the east side. So we're just recommending that because they're putting an addition onto the building, it'd be nice to plant a few more things on that north side of the building so they could put things there. And then it would also be helpful to screen the parking lot a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna turn in a full landscape plan on our next submittal. We sort of stopped when this parking lot came up. We didn't want to spend money on a plan before we knew exactly what we had to do. So we'll have those trees mitigated per the Delafield, tree policy, and then we'll have the rest of the landscaping addressed, both in front of the building and around the parking lot.
I mean, I definitely realize it's an industrial type situation, but the current parcel and building have very little landscaping, right? I mean, it's very, very minimal. So if you could even look at the whole site and try to just, maybe there were plants there years ago. It looks like they haven't been replaced and so forth. So when you look at the landscape plan, please look at the whole building, not just the area that you're putting the addition on.
Yeah, the north side actually does have quite a bit of trees on it still, in pretty good shape. I was there today, and a lot of the plantings along the building are in good shape. But yeah.
And it could be, I did not go to the site, I'm looking at I think it's a winter shot on Google
Possibly,
Maps, so.
yeah.
I think the north, it looks pretty.
The north is in pretty good shape. They've kept it up really well.
Okay.
But I do agree, we'll definitely look at that.
Yeah, just.
John, you need to brush up the landscape.
And they've got some stuff on the
Brush up.
east lot line
Got
too.
it.
But.
And so, I just want to be clear on the parking lot. So the idea is to leave the parking lot the way it is and just light it?
The idea is to light it appropriately, the way it should have been lit, if it had been approved. Landscape it appropriately. We weren't going to change the actual construction of it other than to make sure that the striping and the aisles meet the current requirements of the 24-foot aisles that Amy mentioned, and then make sure that we account for it from a stormwater management side. There's 18,000 square feet of impervious surface that's on this lot now that wasn't there when that stormwater basin was originally designed. So we're going to add those calcs into the improvements that we make to accommodate that stormwater.
Okay.
So that is what we're planning to submit to hopefully solve the parking lot issue and allow them to keep using it.
And then if the second edition comes sometime in the future, most of that parking lot gets ripped out?
Correct, yes. And parking would be reestablished around the perimeter. The second edition, there are some pretty serious cost implications to the site. The site does rise up about 12 feet pretty quickly. So there's retaining walls and exporting of fill that'll have to happen. But so that entire rest of that lot will get reworked pretty substantially when we do that.
Just make it look good until that we get there.
Absolutely, understand.
Okay, I'll put a motion out for conceptual approval of the Tanis addition in accordance with the 4 items stated by the city planner.
Including the permanent light.
Could
It's in
you
there.
please read them off for Sal?
Oh, you want me to read them?
Yes, please.
Okay, number 1, and this is Dan, Sally. Submittal of a landscaping plan with consideration given to the parking lot requirements and removal of 2 trees. Recommendation that the north side of the addition and parking lot be landscaped. Item number 2, submittal of a revised site plan that complies with stormwater management and parking requirements. The parking lot aisles shall be 24 feet in width. Item number 3, submittal of a detailed rendering of the dumpster enclosure, including the type and color of enclosure and any screening. And item 4, a revised lighting plan, including the pole lights surrounding the existing parking lot on the east side of the property.
Second. Zed.
Great. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Good luck.
Great, look forward to seeing you.
Hey, John.
Okay, we will move to 6H, DELC 0749.0693207 Sylvester Drive, Delafield. Owner applicant Edward W.D. Smith II. Applicant seeks a special exception from the non-conforming lot standards in order to raise a detached garage and construct an attached garage.
So I am going to pass around a packet of information. The applicants did a little extra homework after receiving the staff recommendation after the packet's going out. So I've asked them to present this extra information, so they can do that once I quickly go through the report, if you don't mind. So the applicants are proposing a special exception from the non-conforming lot provisions of the code. Their property is zoned RL2 Residential Lake District, which requires a 10,000 square foot lot and 50 foot wide lot as well. The subject property is just under that with 9,072 square feet. It's located on the east shore of Lake Nagawicca. The property is served by sewer and water. They currently have a single-family home and detached garage. I'm going to go to a site plan here. So you can see the detached garage is close to the road. There is a lot line swale in the northeast lot line that captures drainage from the property and directs it to the lake. The applicant is proposing to raise that 411 square foot detached garage and replace it with a 675 square foot attached garage. I do have in here, they're also including a 345 square foot second story flex room. I just want to make sure the commission's aware they are willing to get rid of that flex room as part of this proposal. But it was part of the original packet, so I wanted to make sure I included that. The residence itself complies with all of the district dimensional standards. The existing detached garage, however, does not comply with yard or road setbacks. It's only 2.1 feet from the northeast lot line, whereas 8 feet is required, and 2.7 feet from the right-of-way of the road, whereas 25 feet is required. The property does not comply with minimum open space either. There's 6,827.5 square feet of open space, whereas 7,000 square feet is required. And then I also want to note that a variance was granted from floor area ratio several years ago when the house was constructed. But at that, so the ordinance was a little bit different back then. If you exceeded floor area, you had to get a variance instead of a special exception. And the floor area ratio provision was also limited to 30%, or I think you guys use 0.3. And they received approval to go to 0.39. However, the maximum floor area has since been increased to 40% per code, and they are now proposing to increase that again to 45.9% with the flex room, or it's 42.1% without the second story flex room. And so just to remind you of the provision in the code, a special exception can be granted. They're proposing the special exception from open space and floor area ratio. You do need to take into account the impact, including but not limited to grading and drainage, and the granting of this special exception, what the impact will be on adjoining properties in the surrounding neighborhood, and you may impose such restrictions or conditions as you deem necessary for the protection of the adjacent properties, surrounding neighborhood, and the public interest and welfare. And our recommendation is to exceed, so this is intentionally left to be a little open in case they want to revise their plans. So we're recommending approval from the open space provisions, but denial from floor area ratio provisions. And that they would need to comply with the following conditions before getting a building permit. And so the floor area ratio shall not exceed 40% or 0.4. If they demonstrate that there is an existing pattern of development within the neighborhood, including floor area ratios that exceed 0.4, the request could be reconsidered as potentially being compatible with the surroundings. No adverse drainage shall be caused on adjacent properties or the road. An updated survey shall be submitted that illustrates the location of the attached garage, including a grading and drainage plan that ensures compliance with number 2, which is no adverse drainage. And the existing detached garage shall be removed. Once the detached garage is removed, it will have lost its legal non-conforming structure status. So I just want to read the reason, since it's partially recommending denial. The proposal to exceed open space is reasonable because the lot is approximately 1,000 square feet smaller than the required lot size, which reduces the ability to comply with the standard. There are no anticipated drainage concerns, and it's difficult to justify the approval from the floor area ratio standards to accommodate the larger garage. Previous owner was granted approval for variance to construct the residence, and at that time, the owner made a decision to maximize the floor area of the residence rather than utilize some of the available space for a larger garage. Furthermore, the city increased the maximum floor area ratio in the ordinance by 10%. If the floor area ratio is increased for a second time, it could potentially set a precedent allowing improvements that exceed ordinance standards without setting a limit, which could reduce the integrity of the ordinance. The provision is intended to maximize the overall bulk proportional to the lot size. The applicant can still relocate the detached garage and increase the square feet by approximately 71.3 square feet. I'm sure the applicants have a lot to say here, so unless there's any questions, we can hand it off to them.
Yep, so if you could give us your name and address to get started?
Yes, my name is Ed Smith. This is my wife Sue. We live at 3207 Sylvester Drive in Delafield.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to this. What you have in front of you are, let's start with that first page, which goes through some analysis with the help of Sue. My wife is a real estate agent, so we have access to MLS and the tax records. So we were able to get pretty good estimates of square footages of homes, regardless of what the tax records might say. When they sold it last, we had an MLS listing. So when we went through and looked, you'll see the first line on that table says 3207 Sylvester, proposed only with the garage, so I can compare it with the garage. And I'm going to talk specifically about the floor area ratio of the home and the homes we're comparing it to. So as Amy pointed out, we are at 42.1% if we just talk about the garage and forget the flex bonus one. So that puts us at that 42% with 3821 total square footage, the house being 3165. 2901 Sylvester was a house that was built down the street. I think she has a map and you see it. 21 Chester would be at the bottom of the map that we show, 2901 right there. Okay, and that home, 8,900 lot size, similar lot size to ours. Floor area 3679, and they come in with a ratio at 41.3. And the detail is behind you in the pages. I'm not going to walk through those, but behind for each home with the ML listing and then the tax records from Waukesha. And then the next is 3227 Sylvester Drive. That is 2 lots to the north of our home. Okay, so you've got one, and you see, I think ours is the one on the top is in red, and another lot spaced between, and then the house at 3227. They have 10,000 square feet, 4359, and there's a question you see in here specifically from Amy. We know that the MLS listing gives you square footage of the home. They don't normally list the garage square footage on it. So what we did was estimate. I got on and said, okay, what's a 3.5 car garage? Sue actually went over and talked to her neighbor. She was kind enough to tell us how much storage space she had above, so we're comfortable that they're around that 43.5% floor area ratio. The next one is the house immediately to the south of us. And that home there is lot size 9583 square feet and 4,800 floor area. Now, we know that floor area, the house was just sold 2 years ago. So as an MLS, they have a 3-story home, and that gives them a ratio of about 50%. So when you look at these and compare us asking for 42%, I don't think we're out of line saying that we want to fit into what the neighborhood has. If there are not any questions about the floor area ratio and the discussion and the comparables, I'd like to go into another subject, and that is specifically, to me, a big reason as to why the garage that's detached needs to go down. It's close to the street. It can be a safety hazard when you're backing out. If you look at the pictures, we show a car in the driveway, how close we are right to the street. If you look at it down the road, you can really tell as you look down Sylvester Drive that definitely it's difficult to back out with that vehicle right there and the garage being right on top of the road. Basically, the functional obsolescence of the garage is old. It's 20.5 feet. Sue and I can get our cars in, but that's it. We have, and then I think the next picture shows what we had to put up to put our garbage cans in because there's no room on the side of the garage currently. So we bought this container and put our garbage cans.
And we'll need another one too. We haven't gone through a summer at the lake yet. We were moving in last summer, but we'll need another one for like lake things and we just don't have a room in the garage to store it. With the basement.
So one of the questions and one of the things we also did was talk to a couple of our neighbors, and one of them was kind enough to write a letter, and that's the last document that you'll see. Kevin Markley and his wife Laura. We own the home at 3219 Sylvester Drive next door to the Smith property. We feel the removal of the current non-conforming garage and the addition of a larger garage connected to the Smith home will be a positive for us in the neighborhood. This new attached garage will help increase surrounding property values, give better vision of the street, and improve the overall appearance of the Smith house. One of the things we're also doing as we do this, the house is 30 years old, so I need a new roof. We need a new roof. Siding, if I put a new addition, the garage on, the siding, you can't match 30-year-old siding. So I'm gonna have to take the current aluminum siding off and put all the siding on the house, and that's part of our plans also, is to aesthetically update the home also. So with that, I don't really have anything more unless there are questions, and thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
Is this going to have a 3-car attached,
Pardon me, ma'am?
2-car attached garage?
Well, she wants to know if it's going to be a blue car.
No, it will not be 3-car. 20.
It's just as wide as the house, 25 feet wide, a little deeper at 27, so we have a little for storage.
So the 25 matches the width of the house today.
Yeah.
Because that was a natural place to put it. The 27 puts us at the 25-foot setback. How deep the garage is.
Do you have a basement?
We do not have a basement in our house.
Yeah, that makes storage a premium.
Yes, pretty.
First thing I see with some of these homes that you have as an example here is that they kind of went up and not out so much. Am I correct in that?
It's just the one next door, the new one.
Because I see 2 of them that are like 3-story. So I'm wondering if they didn't go up instead of spreading out.
I believe just the one next door does is a 3-story. All the others seem to be longer, like longer.
The 3201 is 3-story.
Yeah, I mean, the lot sizes are a little variable. I would say that your garage it would meet road setback, but it would be a little bit closer to the road than some of your adjacent.
Immediate neighbor. The one you showed on the south, yes. And step back further.
Yeah, I mean, some people are closer to the lake, some people are further.
Yeah.
Scott, how would this compare to somebody who was building a new house a new construction? Say they were to tear down this house and they wanted to come in and build a new one on the spot. How would the floor area ratio be handled here?
Being a new house, they would be limited to 40%, but it is a substandard lot, and that's why they're here. So someone with a substandard lot could come to Plan Commission and ask for special consideration. So it would be up to Plan Commission whether or not to hold the max floor area ratio at 40%, even for a lot that's less than the required, that has less than the required lot area. And that's just the standard Plan Commission is going to have to come up with. Do they allow the minimum floor area for the minimum size lot of 10,000 feet, or should they reduce it accordingly, or somewhere in between? And that's a standard that Plan Commission is going to have to come up with.
But what's the standard today?
40%.
40%.
Which would be based on a 10,000 square foot lot.
Correct.
This is a smaller lot. So the fact that you're at 42%?
Yes. If we were at 10,000, we wouldn't be talking about floor area ratio, because we're not.
Yeah, if you're-
It's 3621 over 10,000.
So you'd be under the 40 or around there. I didn't do the math, but.
So that would be 4,000, right? 10,
If
Yeah.
I took the flex room,
40%.
we used the numbers on my spreadsheet, it's 3821 over 10,000 is 38%.
Yeah, so it comes down to the non-conforming lot size, and this is a tough one, yeah.
So I guess, I mean, that is something to consider though, is a conforming lot would be held to a greater restriction than them, because they would be limited to 4,000 square feet total, where they're proposing 4,166. That's with the flex room. What are you proposing without the flex room?
Right.
I don't have that square foot.
3821 number, 3,821.
Okay, so they would be under,
That was my point.
you just would want to probably give them more allowance than you would give somebody with 10,000 square feet. But it sounds
Agreed.
like they're under 4,000.
That's kind of what I was getting at. But the 40% at 10,000, we don't.
We're the third owner of this house, and nobody else has kind of tackled this problem of the garage. And, you know, to do all the work that we're gonna do, the siding and all of that, the garage, to build a new substandard garage that we can't get our cars and can't get in and out of, just doesn't make sense.
When did you acquire this house?
A year ago,
So,
almost a year.
I mean, we're
So-
willing to take on the expense and the building has, I think it was, you know, our plans, we have the plans drawn up with the original architect, and it really did a good job. It's really doing it nice.
Yeah, I don't deny any of that. My heartache is that
Right.
someone before you chose to put more of it into the house and less into the garage. Had they proposed it differently, then we'd have a different outcome. And that's a tough one to get over. I like your homework that there's other situations like this in your neighborhood, but usually there's a story with each one of those too, and we don't have that story. I don't know if you do, Scott, on any of these?
Say that again?
The exceptions, or the, if you want to call it violations of the surrounding homes that they have showed here, why were those granted?
They were granted, I think, by variance back when variances were more easily obtained.
And the variants were issued by who?
By the Zoning Board of Appeals.
And what's their standard?
I don't know, and it sometimes changes. All I know is
No, what's the standard for the Board of Zoning Appeals to approve a variance?
a hardship.
is that required under this proposal?
I think they're entitled to pursue a variance, but because it's a substandard lot,
tough.
we thought 3 or 4 years ago that this body was better able to understand the application than the zoning board of appeals. So we clarified this path 3 or 4 years ago.
So in doing that, the same criteria, including hardship, would apply here, or is that exempt here?
No, because the hardship was created by the city. The lot existed before the RL2 zoning district. So here's a lot that's not 10,000 feet, and at some point, I don't know if it was the 70s or the 60s, the city came along and overlaid an RL2 zoning onto this lot, automatically creating a hardship.
So it's non-conforming from that date?
Right.
When they overlaid the zoning on that?
So, just the big difference here is it says in the code, the special exception can be granted considering impacts such as grading, drainage, adjoining properties in the surrounding neighborhood, and public interest and welfare, where the variance is subject to state statutory requirements, and the board has to determine they can't practically use the property for a permitted purpose without its approval. So it's supposed to be a more stringent standard through the variance.
What is the safety implication of having the driveway that close to the street, though? Wouldn't that provide that extra, that we would need to pass something like this or approve?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that internally, and it's certainly a benefit to move the detached garage. It sticks out on the property as a very non-conforming structure. With that said, they could attach a 20 by 20 or I think even a little bit larger 21 by 20 garage to the house and conform too. So it's just how big should that garage be considering the lot size.
By attaching this size of a garage onto the house, does it have any negative effect on drainage or anything that could have an effect on the neighbors, with water flow or anything like that? So
It wouldn't be disturbed, the water flow, that's the law today.
But Ed, please talk into the microphone so people on TV can hear you.
Yeah, Ed, I'm sorry. Yeah, where the proposed garage is to be attached currently is level land right between the house and the garage, the detached garage now. So we would just be excavating to put the foundation in and then not disturbing because there's a swale, the slope to go into a ditch that goes to the lake, as Amy talked to earlier.
Yeah, there's a drainage ditch.
I think
So I was on site the other day, and if you look at page 4 of what she just handed out, there's a good side view of the existing detached garage, and just north of that is a substantial swale. It's that bottom picture.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
That's actually where the culvert under the road runs for the ditching on the opposite side of the street, and all the water runs down through there.
and that could be, I didn't see that, but I guess my point is, on some properties on Sylvester Drive, it's perfectly flat and drainage is a challenge. I'm just pointing out there is a substantial swale. For the most part, this garage is going to go straight back and a few feet south. Is that?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
okay.
A few feet away from that swale.
Okay,
That's correct.
What are the dimensions of the current garage?
20 feet 6 inches by 20 feet 6 inches.
Oh, 20 by 20. And the proposed?
25 by 27.
And the flex is above it?
Pardon me?
The flex part of the garage?
Yeah, what the flex is really of the trusses of the garage, and just happens to work, it could line up with the second floor.
Okay.
So you're putting the trusses on, you got it anyhow.
I'm sympathetic to this, but I have a problem with setting precedent. And it's really tough because I can see this happening over and over again with lake property, because these were properties that long ago had summer cottages, and now everybody comes along and puts a big house on it.
It happens to other properties too, but
Yeah,
you're right,
it
it does happen quite a bit on the lake.
Right.
I'm with you on that
Yeah.
precedence, but the fact that they came in today and showed
Right, yeah.
adjoining properties that are in the area.
But would you consider then that grandfathered in because of these other properties?
That's why I said I don't know those situations on those other properties. Were they exceeding it when the zoning was overlaid on there? Or
And
did
the
they
fact-
also get exceptions?
And then you've got to deal with the non-conforming.
No, it's very difficult.
So
Well,
the
what
question
year
is-
was the overlay put on, Scott, roughly?
I don't know.
I mean, when the city was,
First zoning probably,
when
like you
the
said,
city was
70s.
incorporated,
70s, probably early 70s.
yeah, so.
The largest one that's next door actually was built in 2004, so it's not really old for, 4,800 square feet on a 9,000 something lot.
So it sounds to me, and the question of precedent that comes into play, when Scott, you mentioned originally these were under the zoning board of appeals involving a variance, which as you pointed out, was a little bit more strict or in terms of
Stringent.
interpretation. So if it transferred the responsibility of these types of matters to us, is that to tell us we have more discretion to make that
No, I
decision?
think, Amy, I don't want to misstate, but I thought you said this process could be more restrictive, is that what you?
No, it's just the provisions are different. The variance is held to statutory requirements
Right.
where, they have to prove that there's no practical opportunity to use the property. They can't use it for the residential purposes that they're zoned for. And they certainly have that. So technically, that variance process is very difficult to meet. It's supposed to be difficult to meet the tests of approval. Now, whether or not the board applied them, I don't know. And then the standards that you're held to are written in the staff report. It just has a different criteria. It's really how the proposal affects the surrounding neighborhood, adjoining properties, and public interest and welfare. And I think that public interest and welfare is really where you get into setting that precedent of not holding people to the standard of the ordinance and what are the expectations. How do the neighbors know it's going to be built next to them?
Well, what I'm saying, and I think you're right, because the use of the word hardship was under the variance process, and that introduces a completely different element than what we're talking about in terms of public interest, safety, things like that, which we have a better view of in terms of its impact. Hardship is sometimes an emotional thing, sometimes a personal thing, but we now are talking about an overview of the surrounding areas, and precedent comes into the play, because I'm certainly moving a setback for you going 2.5 feet from the garage to the city. That to me is more of a safety risk than a benefit, and but I think we need to evaluate, and maybe it's been helpful to have the MLS listing on some of the other properties that have a different floor area ratio and things, but I guess I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of how does precedent and our discretion deal with that precedent when you have a lot of mitigating factors that are brought to our attention. And it's not hardship, you haven't alleged hardship yet other than the fact you'd like to do it.
Right.
But it's not like you're going to have to leave tomorrow if you don't do it. So, but hardship isn't the issue apparently here. That's at a variance zoning appeal. We're talking about more of the overall language that we're limited to. We can only go as far as the language provides us. Does it give us discretion? I think that does, but that's what we have to decide, to exercise discretion in this case.
So Amy, tell me if I'm understanding this wrong. If they don't do the bonus room, they'll come in closer to that allowable?
So if they do the bonus room, they would be at 45.9 or 0.459. Percentages are just easier for me to understand. 45.9%. Or 4,166 square feet. If they don't do the bonus room, they'll be at 42.1% with 3,821 square feet. A pretty big difference between having the bonus room and not.
But the bonus room is your plan.
What we said was that we would come in and ask for all of it, but if I could leave with just the garage the way I want to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the that bonus room is taking this pretty high. That's
Yeah.
up to 46%.
To be honest, we need more of the space on the main area of the
Sure.
garage than, you know, than upstairs, because we
Yeah.
aren't gonna wanna carry all of our stuff up there to store
Right.
it.
And the 42% is closer to some of the neighboring ones, 41.3, a 43.5, and a 50.1.
When you acquired this property, had you been made aware of these issues that we were facing when you came in? Because it's only a year ago.
If we didn't know the exact ordinances that said floor area ratios of this and that's there, we had discussions with the realtor that we bought the house from, was the same officer, Sue, talked to some of the neighbors we know, and they had added on. And the discussion was that most people, if they weren't unreasonable, were able to get approval to do changes that they felt were needed.
So these were,
When we bought it, yeah, we thought we would be able to attach the garage and make the garage functional.
based upon what the neighbors told you?
Say again, sir?
The neighbors told you, or
And the neighbor
Or your
and another
broker.
And the
realtor.
realtor.
the realtor? But nothing was factually shown to you? It was
No.
basic word of mouth saying, if you're reasonable, this could happen. And here we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Buyer beware.
You have one neighbor that sent in a nice note
Yes, sir.
going along. So what about your other neighbors or issues with that neighbor?
No, there's no issues. He said he'd support us. We'd asked the same thing. He just wasn't able to get it done. We asked just a couple folks.
I mean, it makes sense to want to move the garage.
Yeah.
You know, it is a safety issue when you look at it from where you are right now. And you know, seeing the pictures and how close the garage is to the roadway. So that's an issue to take in consideration at the very least, you know, for a safety factor for you and for anyone who's going up and down the road. You know, I mean, I for one don't see it being, I understand the 40%, I do, and it's important for us to be able to hold that, otherwise it does set precedence. In this case, you know, there are other existing properties on the road throughout time at some point. For whatever reason, they are exceeding it, in some cases substantially. You know, we don't, like you say, we don't know why right now. So if we're going to that 42%, you know, like I say, I know it's over, but maybe I'm the only one, but I don't see it being that big of an issue in some ways to outweigh the safety factor of getting the garage pushed further up, right up to the house. It's not going to have a negative, it appears not to have a negative effect on the drainage or any negative impact to the neighbors in that regard.
I like the fact that they're going to be redoing this property if they get the approval for the garage. That'll conform more with their neighborhood and what's around them. I did like the improvements that you want to make and how it would, because I like things that blend with everything else in the neighborhood, and I think that the improvement that you want to make with the garage without the storage space would make it very uniform to your neighborhood. That's what I liked about it, and I'm kind of leaning, yes.
Well,
So,
I think from my assessment, listening to it all, is that I think, you know, when we're trying to do the best we can under the circumstances we're given, and that's where discretion is supposed to be reasonable, deliberate, and processed. And so between the two, bonus room or no bonus room, you know, if we were going to make an exception to the rule, for lack of a better term, it seems to me that the bonus room is a bit over the top, no pun intended, given what we have to build on our precedent. And other people are going to come to us and say, hey, what about those Smith people? They got a bonus room, we can't have one. All of a sudden, we're in a bonus room fight. So I just think we have to be reasonable and just and fair within the rules that we have and the authority we do have. And I think you've made a really genuine, authentic presentation, and I'm sympathetic to it, especially the safety issue involving the 2.5 feet.
yeah.
Especially if there are kids in the neighborhood or anybody else, dogs, all of a sudden you got a safety issue. That's important to me. But I'm not crazy about the bonus room as it affects other potential applicants here.
Is that a motion?
It sounded like one.
It did.
Yeah.
To get rid of the bonus room, garage, just to have some space.
Well, unless somebody else has anything else to say, I'm
And you
being...
said the garage will fit in line with the existing house, so
Ready to go?
it's not bigger, it's not gonna look
No,
odd.
do it.
5 feet wide, just like the house.
The side of the garage match up with the side of the house. And there's a little walkway to the door. And that's their day, we just want to spend the
And you said that'll be 25 by 27, right?
Yes, sir.
27 foot deep.
27 feet.
That's where we
And that
get
puts us right up to the
storage,
setback.
so we don't have
setback.
to use these things.
It's understandable,
on the
yeah.
sides that kind of look tacky.
All right, I'll send a motion out here. I would move that you approve the special exception from the non-conforming lot standards in order to raise a detached garage and construct a detached garage on the premises at 3207 Sylvester Drive, but not include the bonus room or flex center. And recommend to council.
So you're approving the
Does this
exceeding
have to
the...
go,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, does this have to go to council?
Or maybe it doesn't. No, I'll just eliminate the last part.
Do you want to include any of the other conditions related to adverse drainage? In the
Well, yes,
existing
I would like to,
garage?
I'm sorry. The recommendations that Amy had set forth under 1 through 4.
Except one.
Except
one.
number
One is
one.
out. One is out.
Okay, so you want to read the other ones, please,
Yeah,
Jim, as
I'll
part of your
read,
motion?
To include in the motion, number 2, no adverse drainage shall be caused on adjacent properties on the road or the road. Number 3, an updated survey shall be submitted that illustrates the location of the detached garage, including a grading and drainage plan that ensures compliance with the preceding condition involving no adverse drainage in number 2. And the existing detached garage shall be removed. Once the detached garage is removed, it will have lost its legal non-conforming structure status.
Second.
Laura, you second it?
Yep.
Okay. Discussion.
I just want to make it clear that no floor area above the garage can be created with a structural headroom or ceiling height of 5 feet or more. I mean, just, it's not for storage. If it does, it counts as floor area. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear that really nothing can go above the garage as far as volume of space that can be used.
Scott, I'd simply say, when you review the plans, they can't have attic trusses.
Right, and I will put
And
that.
that
Okay.
gets rid of the use of the attic.
Just want to make sure that no floor area will be developed above the garage.
Yeah. And there won't be any dead space there that you can't get to. It'll be all trussed.
Any other discussion?
Safety is important here.
It is. I've nearly run over a couple of people who moved back out and then left and
Okay.
went right, and then by the time you start backing out, somebody's there. So,
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Good luck.
Good luck. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, number 7, zoning ordinance revisions. Items recommended for discussion and possible action, none. Number 8, report of city officials. Clerk, planning commission meeting dates and deadlines, meeting July 29th, 2020. Meeting submittal deadline, July 14th, 2020. Don't believe there are any correspondence. Planners report?
None.
No report. Building inspector's report. There's been
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Okay. Number 9, adjournment. Seeing no further business, we are now adjourned at 9:38. 8:38? Or, I'm sorry, 8:38. 8:38.
I will put something together for Scott so that, and for you, so that those conditions as laid out tonight are clear. Okay.